everybody, this is the Wikstrand. So, I was about 11 or 12 years when I read Dune the first time, and I thought that Frank Herbert's space novel was absolutely fantastic. And I was very intrigued when I found out that David Lynch, of all people, had done an adaptation of the story. I saw the movie and I thought it was really, really great. Now, over the years, I have seen this movie 6, 7, maybe 8 times, and every time I see the movie I have a different opinion about it. The rating keeps shifting all the time, and almost depending on what mood I'm in, it gets a different ratings. Now, it should be said that the last time I saw this movie was about 6 or 7 months before Denis Villeneuve's monster blockbuster came out, the new version of Dune, and that I think doesn't affect the rating of this movie. I think this movie is basically its own thing, and I will explain why a little bit later. But I think that this is as close to a final verdict on how good this movie is as I can get. It should also be mentioned that the same day that I rewatched this movie the last time was also the same day that I was able to survive watching the movie Nomadland, which I think is one of the most overrated, artsy-fartsy, boring movies that I have ever seen. In comparison, this movie just felt like it was so much alive and stuff was happening. Unlike, Nomadland, but that is definitely the only time that you will ever hear those two movies, mentioned in the same sentence. Let's find out together why I think this is the best movie that David Lynch has ever made. I'm not a huge David Lynch fan, but I think this is the best thing he has ever done. This is the original Dune. But first, since this is a 1984 movie, we have to check out the poster and see if they have some over-the-top nonsense written on top of it. Whoa! A world beyond your experience, beyond your imagination. It's a world where sandworms, 1,000 feet long, guard creation's greatest treasure. The spice that prolongs life and enables the mind to fold space and slow time. Where a prophecy will be fulfilled and a young leader with incredible powers will emerge to command an army of 5 million warriors in the final battle for control of a universe and the source of the ultimate power, the planet called Dune. Oh, and let's not forget Toto's absolutely fantastic soundtrack. Da-na-na-na. Man, it's awesome. Try to make a very long story a little bit shorter, shall we? The spice melange is the most important thing in the universe. The Space Guild uses the spice melange to travel without moving. They basically fold space and can, cover magnificent distances in just a short while. And there's only one place in the entire universe where you can obtain the spice, the desert planet of Arrakis. Recently, the House of Harkonnen has lost the contract of, mining the spice, and their arch nemesis is ready to step in and take over this very lucrative business, House Atreides, led by Duke Leto and his wife Jessica and, their son Paul, which is our main character. We'll get to him in a second. Now, they're going there with their entire household, fully knowing that there might be some kind of a conspiracy behind this. Maybe Harkonnen has some dark plans for them and stuff like that. At the same time as this is happening, Paul kind of realizes that he is not like most people. He has been raised by his mother in the Bene Gesserit way. The Bene Gesserit is a kind of weird cult or sect or something like that. They basically have the abilities to use the voice, which basically is, the Jedi mind trick thing. You can convince people to do something they wouldn't do. Now, this is mostly done for girls, and he's a boy. But his power is already growing, and there is this legend on Arrakis that there will come a man who will change everything, the Kwisatz Haderach. maybe Paul is the Kwisatz Haderach. Some people on Dune believes that and, look upon him like a kind of a messiah character and stuff like that. But the Bene Gesserit is less than happy that Jessica has, taught Paul in the way of the Bene Gesserits. We also have the Emperor that is lurking around in the shadows, maybe planning some kind of chicanery, we shall see. And of course we have the wild card of this little thing, the Fremens, the desert people who lives, far out in the desert, who protects an ancient secret. What is the secret? We shall see. Is perhaps Paul the Kwisatz Haderach? We shall see. Now, I will say this. This is a movie that you can identify from just looking at one still image. This image, this image, this image, this image. You know that you are looking at a still image from Dune. The atmosphere of this movie feels like nothing else. The style of this movie looks like nothing else, and the acting of this movie sounds like nothing else, because if you would have, just read these lines, you would have thought, what the fuck is this? But Patrick Stewart and Jürgen Prochnow is able to, yell out these incredibly silly and nonsensical lines and make them work somehow. Some of them are, ripped directly from the books, and it shouldn't work in a live action context, but it kind of does. I really like the cast of this movie. Brad Dourif is great, Kyle MacLachlan, or however you're supposed to pronunciate his name, is fantastic as Paul Atreides, and I've always had a soft spot for Patrick Stewart. And if I'm going to be honest, when I was a teenager and watching this, I had a massive MILF crush on Lady Jessica, and the entire cast is so likable and so colorful, and you really care about them. And the style of this movie is so awesome because it feels almost like a Terry Gilliam movie, and the scope of this movie is absolutely awesome. And even though the special effects have aged somewhat, I can still enjoy this movie because it looks so big. It feels almost like they're doing Lawrence of Arabia in space. And the arc that Paul Atreides go through is absolutely magnificent. But there is one thing that David Lynch is very bad at, and that is directing action sequences. So all the action set pieces doesn't look very impressive and kind of looks kind of bad. And as I said, the special effects damages this movie somewhat. And some stuff from Luke was either cut, reduced, or minimalized. This is especially true when it comes to the final confrontation. Not, the knife fight in the end with Sting, but rather the final confrontation with the Emperor. When I read that the first time, it's one of the most satisfying readings I have ever done. I absolutely love that sequence, and I really hope that Denis Villeneuve can, make that sequence come alive when, that sequence, I hope, will come around in, Dune 2 or Dune 3. But this movie is very entertaining. They have been able to squeeze in 5 hours of plot into 2 hours and 13 minutes. The pacing of this movie is absolutely amazing. Stuff is happening all the time. There are no dead spaces in this entire movie. There is not a scrap of fat on this movie. It moves so fast, it has so many characters that it is sometimes a little bit difficult to, tag along really for the ride. But it is a really entertaining, magnificently looking, and very spectacular science fiction movie. It's always fun to have over-the-top villains, and Dune sure has a lot of them. I want you to squeeze and squeeze, Raban! Oh my god, they're so hilarious. Now, if you've seen the Denis Villeneuve movie, there is really no reason to see this movie because the Denis Villeneuve movie is the far superior movie. The only thing this movie does better is probably Toto's magnificent soundtrack. But this is still a very fun, this is still a very spectacular, this is still a very entertaining movie with a great cast. Not as good as the Villeneuve version, but pretty damn close. And it is a very unique movie. This is a very entertaining movie about prophecies and betrayals and space adventures and, discovering your destiny and stuff like that, filled to the brims with weird overacting, weird dreams, and people whispering to themselves for some reason. That was a thing they really could have, cut from, when you're doing a book adaptation from book to movie. You didn't have to do, people whispering to themselves what they're thinking. That was really weird. But this is a movie I really cannot really recommend, considering that there is a far superior movie to it. But as I said, a very fun and very kitschy space adventure. And if you're into that sort of things, I would definitely advise you to see this movie, even though, as I said, the Neville movies is far better. I love the costumes, I love the sets. The acting is enjoyably bad. The soundtrack is fantastic. The pacing is great. I give the 1984 version of Dune 75 points. This is a really fun, really spectacular and really unique space adventure. It's not for everybody, but for me, this is a movie I can rewatch over and over again. And despite it not being as good as the Neuville version, I'm really glad that two versions of this story exist. That gives you the freedom to watch whichever you want to and make up your own mind. For me, this is a very good movie, but the Neuville version is fucking amazing. So which version is your favorite? I'll see you next time for, well, so-and-so reviewing, well, such and such. Thank you for watching. Thank you very much.